10-year-old Samuel burst through the cabin door, breath ragged in the frozen air. "Mama, there's blood by the fence line, boot tracks, and wolves." Catherine Brennan looked up from the stove, her hand stilling over the coffee pot. December dawn had barely broken over the Montana territory, painting the sky in shades of iron and ash. She saw fear in her son's eyes, real fear, not the kind born from a child's imagination. She grabbed her Winchester from above the mantel and reached for her coat. "Show me." They rode out together. Samuel perched behind her on the mare. The cold bit through their layers like teeth. Frost clung to every blade of grass, every branch. The world was silent except for the crunch of hooves on frozen ground and the distant cry of wind through. The pines. The blood trail was easy to follow. Dark drops in white snow, leading from the road toward the northern fence line. Samuel pointed ahead, his mittened hands shaking. "There, Mama." A man lay collapsed against a fence post, half buried in snowdrift. His lips were blue, his face pale as death. 50 yards beyond, 3 gray shapes paced and circled, breath steaming in the cold. Wolves. Waiting. Catherine dismounted, rifle ready. She fired twice into the air. The shots echoed across the valley like thunder. The wolves scattered, vanishing into the timber. She knelt beside the stranger. His clothes were threadbare, his boots worn through at the soles. A drifter, maybe a thief, possibly dangerous. But his chest still rose and fell, shallow and slow. 8-year-old Lily appeared at the fence gate, having followed on her pony. Her voice trembled. "Mama, please, we can't leave him." Catherine's late husband had died alone in a ravine. His horse returned riderless. She'd found him 3 days later, frozen and forgotten. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with decision. "Help me get him on the horse." Together, they lifted the stranger. He was dead weight, skin cold as river stone. Samuel held the reins steady while Catherine draped the man across the saddle. Lily rode ahead to open the cabin door. Inside, they stripped his frozen clothes and wrapped him in blankets near the fire. His fever burned beneath his icy skin, death pulling him 2 directions at once. Catherine set water to boil and sent Samuel for more wood. Lily locked the door behind them, her small hands fumbling the latch. "Mama, what if he's a bad man?" Catherine pressed a cloth to the stranger's forehead, checking his pulse. "I think he's a dying man. Child, out here. That's all that matters." The stranger mumbled in delirium, words breaking through fever like stones through ice. "Shouldn't have come back. They'll find me." Catherine's eyes narrowed. She looked toward the window, where dawn light grew stronger but no warmer. Somewhere out there, someone was hunting this man, and she'd just brought him into her home. 3 days passed before the stranger opened his eyes. Grant McCoy woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke, the sound of children's laughter muffled by distance. He stared at a rough-hewn timber ceiling, trying to remember where he was. The last clear memory stumbling through snow. Wolves howling. Cold deeper than bone. He tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his ribs and fingers. He gasped. Fell back. A woman's silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit by firelight. For a moment, he thought he'd died, and this was some kind of heaven. Then she spoke, and her voice was too real, too cautious, to belong to any angel. "You're awake. Good. I was starting to wonder if I'd saved a corpse." Grant turned his head. She was younger than her voice suggested, maybe 35. Dark hair pulled back, wearing a black morning dress that had seen better days. Widow. Then, this was her home. He looked around. Carved furniture, glass windows, children's toys stacked neatly in a corner. This was a wealthy household, or had been once. Shame flooded through him hot and thick. He was charity. A burden. "Ma'am, I can't." His voice cracked from disuse. She set a cup of broth on the table beside him. "You can't leave yet." You'd make it to the porch and collapse. I didn't drag you out of the snow just to watch you die on my doorstep." He tried again to stand, made it 3 steps before his legs gave out. He caught himself on the doorframe, breathing hard. The porch stretched before him, then the yard, then miles of white nothing. She was right. He'd never make it. The woman sighed and helped him back to the chair by the fire. "My name is Catherine Brennan. This was my late husband's ranch. Those are my children, Samuel and Lily." Grant nodded toward the children peeking from behind the loft railing. Samuel waved. Lily hid. "Grant McCoy, ma'am, rancher, or was." He looked at his frostbitten fingers, wrapped in clean bandages. "Reckon I'm nothing much now." Catherine poured herself coffee and sat across from him. "You're alive, Mr. McCoy. That's something." Samuel clattered down the ladder and peppered Grant with questions. How'd he end up in the snow? Did he see the wolves? Could he track animals? Did he know how to brake? Horses Grant answered as best he could, his voice growing steadier. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious. Lily remained distant, watching from behind her mother's skirts with dark, suspicious eyes. Catherine finally shooed Samuel away and leaned forward. "Mr. McCoy, I won't pry into your business, but you said something in your fever about someone finding you." Grant's jaw tightened. "Just fever talk, ma'am." She held his gaze. "Fever talk usually has truth in it." He said nothing. After a long moment, she stood. "Rest. Heal. We'll talk more when you're stronger." That afternoon, her ranch hand, a weathered man named Clyde, rode to town for supplies. Grant saw him glance back toward the cabin, his expression skeptical. By nightfall, the whole town would know a strange man was living under the Brennan widow's roof. Grant closed his eyes and listened to the fire crackle. He'd brought trouble to these people. He always did. A man's pride could keep him warm, but it couldn't keep him alive, and neither could it keep others safe from his past. Outside, the wind howled like wolves at the door. 1 week later, Catherine sat at her late husband's desk, staring at numbers that bled red across the ledger pages. Loans, debts, threats of foreclosure typed on official county paper. She traced Thomas Brennan's signature sharp, angular, cruel even in ink. A blizzard hammered the cabin, wind shrieking through gaps in the shutters. The children huddled near the fire, playing quietly with wooden toys. Grant sat in the corner, whittling a piece of wood, still too weak for heavy labor. Catherine's mind drifted back through the years. She'd married Thomas at 17, fresh off a farm, dazzled by his wealth and confidence. Within a year, she'd learned the truth. Thomas Brennan was a land baron who stole property, crushed rivals, ruled by fear. He'd bought her like livestock and treated her the same. His death, a fall from his horse on a steep trail, had freed her. But the town blamed her for it. Whispered of murder, of greed. She'd fled here with Samuel and Lily, to this remote corner of the ranch, hoping distance would bring peace. It hadn't. Over dinner, Grant broke the silence. "Lost my ranch 5 years back. Drought killed the cattle. Debts piled up. Bank took everything." He pushed beans around his plate. "Had a brother once. Buried him myself after fever took him. After that, nothing seemed worth holding on to." Samuel looked up. "Where's your family now?" "Gone. Son, all gone." Lily spoke for the first time, her voice small. "Like our papa." Grant met Catherine's eyes across the table. She nodded once, acknowledging the shared language of loss. A loud crack startled them. Wind had torn a shutter loose. It banged against the cabin wall like gunshots. Grant stood, reaching for his coat. "You're not strong enough," Catherine said. "Shutter stays loose. The whole wall could go." He pulled on his boots. "I'll manage." Samuel scrambled up. "I'll help." before Catherine could protest. They were out the door and into the storm. The cold hit like a fist. Snow whipped horizontal, blinding. Samuel held the lantern while Grant wrestled the shutter back into place, hammering nails with numb fingers. A gust of wind threw Samuel off balance. He stumbled toward the edge of the porch. Grant lunged, caught him by the collar, pulled him back. Pain screamed through Grant's half-healed ribs, but he didn't let go until the boy was steady. They staggered back inside, gasping and covered in snow. Catherine wrapped Samuel in a blanket, her hands shaking with relief and anger. You could have been killed. Grant leaned against the wall, holding his side. He's fine, ma'am. And you're bleeding through your bandages. She pointed to a chair. Sit. He obeyed, too exhausted to argue. She unwrapped the old bandages, cleaned the reopened wound, wrapped him again with efficient, angry movements. When she finished, she sat back and looked at him. You die for us. For children you barely know. Why? Grant met her gaze. Because nobody should die alone in the cold, and nobody should have to bury their child. If I can stop that, I will. Catherine's throat tightened. She looked at her children, Samuel's wide eyes, Lily's cautious trust beginning to bloom. This man had nothing, no land, no money, no future, but he had honor, the kind her husband never possessed. She made a decision. Stay through winter. You work. You heal. You teach Samuel what he needs to know. Come spring, you choose stay or go. Grant stared at her. Ma'am, I got nothing to offer you but labor and trouble. You already gave my son his life. That's more than most men offer. He nodded slowly. I'll stay, and I'll earn my keep. That night, settled in the barn loft with blankets and a lantern, Grant noticed something through the window. Fresh surveyor's stakes marked the property line, ribbons tied to them fluttering in the wind. Someone had been measuring her land. Recently. He didn't mention it. Not yet. Winter showed you who had grit and who had quit, and whoever was circling this ranch like a vulture would. Show their hand soon enough. Grant pulled the blanket tighter and closed his eyes, listening to the storm rage outside. Late January brought a break in the cold. The sun emerged, pale but persistent, and icicles dripped from the cabin eaves like slow applause. Grant rose before dawn, as he had every morning for 3 weeks. He fed the livestock, chopped firewood, mended tack and harness. His hands had healed. His ribs no longer screamed with every breath. Strength returned to his body, and with it, purpose. Samuel shadowed him everywhere. A tireless apprentice. Grant taught him to track rabbit in snow, to read weather in the sky, to tie knots that held under strain. A good knot saves lives, Grant said, demonstrating a bowline. A bad one slips when you need it most. Tie it right, or don't tie it at all. Samuel practiced until his fingers cramped, determined to match Grant's skill. Lily watched from the cabin window for days before venturing outside. One morning, she approached Grant at the woodpile and held out a scrap of paper, a drawing of a doll, carefully sketched. Can you make her? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Grant knelt to her level. I'll try. Little miss. Can't promise she'll be pretty, but she'll be sturdy. That night, he carved by lantern light head, body, limbs. He used Catherine's sewing scraps for a dress. When he presented the finished doll to Lily, her face transformed. She hugged it to her chest, then, shyly, hugged Grant's leg. Thank you, she whispered. Catherine watched from the doorway, something warm and aching stirring in her chest. The rhythm of the days became a kind of music. Catherine cooked and managed the household. Grant worked the land. The children learned and laughed. Evenings, they gathered by the fire reading, carving, mending. It felt almost like family. One evening, Catherine mended Grant's torn shirt while he repaired a bridle. Their fingers brushed over the fabric. Both pulled away quickly, heat rising in their faces. Neither spoke of it, but the air between them hummed with unspoken things. Later, Catherine found wildflowers on the porch railing, dried blooms saved from autumn, arranged carefully. She smiled, touching the petals gently, and left them there. The fragile piece shattered when hoofbeats approached at midday. Warren Kent rode up on a bay gelding, his coat expensive, his face soft and cruel. He was the town banker, the man who held the mortgages on half the county. He'd been circling Catherine's property like a buzzard for months. Mrs. Brennan. He tipped his hat with mock courtesy. "I've come about the loan." Catherine stepped onto the porch, arms crossed. "You gave me until spring. Mr. Kent." "That was before interest accumulated. 30 days. Mrs. Brennan, pay in full or I foreclose." He glanced past her to where Grant stood in the barn doorway. "Or perhaps you found other ways to manage your debts." The insinuation hung in the air like poison. Grant stepped forward, his voice low and even. "The lady said she has 30 days. You best be leaving." Kent's smile was a blade. "And who are you, hired help or something less respectable?" Grant's hands clenched, but he didn't rise to the bait. "I'm a man who knows when someone's overstayed their welcome." Kent laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 30 days, Mrs. Brennan. After that, this land is mine." He turned his horse and rode off, kicking up mud. Catherine's hands shook not from fear, but from rage barely contained. Grant saw it in the set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes. She'd been fighting alone for too long, holding the line against men like Kent who mistook widowhood for weakness. That night, Grant made a decision. He'd find a way to help her. He didn't know how yet, but a man who ran from trouble when someone needed him wasn't worth the air he breathed. Outside, the first stars emerged, cold and distant. Spring was coming, but so was the reckoning. February deepened. Snow fell in gentle waves, softer now, less brutal. Inside the cabin, firelight painted the walls gold. Grant sat at the table, staring at the Bible he carried everywhere, worn leather cover. Pages soft from his mother's touch years ago. Catherine poured coffee and noticed the frustration in his shoulders. "You all right?" He hesitated, then admitted the truth. "Can't read it. Never learned how." Catherine set the cup down gently. "Your mother read to you. Every night. Till she died when I was 12. Tried to learn after. But," he shrugged, shame coloring his voice, "always felt too late. Too stupid." "It's never too late. And you're not stupid." Catherine pulled a chair beside him. "I can teach you, if you'd like." Grant looked at her, really looked. Her face was kind, patient, free of judgment. He nodded. The lessons began that night. Catherine started with letters, tracing them on paper, pronouncing each sound. Grant was a slow student, but determined. His calloused fingers gripped the pencil awkwardly, forming shapes that wobbled and slanted. "This one's A," Catherine said, like the sound at the start of apple. Grant repeated it, wrote it, repeated it again. Nights blurred together. Samuel and Lily slept in the loft while Catherine and Grant worked by firelight, their heads bent close over the pages. The intimacy of it surprised them both, the quiet focus, the shared breath, the accidental touches. One evening, 3 weeks in, Grant wrote his name for the first time, Grant McCoy. The letters were uneven, childlike, but unmistakably his. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother would be so proud." Grant's throat tightened. He set the pencil down and looked at her. "Why are you doing this teaching me? I mean..." She was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice low. "My marriage was loveless. Grant, built on fear and control. Thomas decided everything: what I wore, what I said, how I raised the children. I lived in a cage made of gold." She met his eyes. "I don't know if I can trust a man again. Even you. Grant reached across the table, hesitated, then took her hand. His touch was gentle, asking permission. I'm not asking for your trust yet, ma'am, just a chance to earn it. Catherine didn't pull away. They sat like that, hands joined, fire crackling, the world outside forgotten. Upstairs, Samuel whispered to Lily, I think Mama loves him. Lily clutched her wooden doll. What if he leaves like Papa? Samuel had no answer. He just held his sister's hand in the dark. Below. Catherine withdrew her hand slowly, as if waking from a dream. We should sleep. Tomorrow's chores won't wait. Grant nodded and retreated to the barn. But neither of them slept easily that night. Trust wasn't given free, it was built. One honest word at a time. And they were building something, whether they admitted it or not. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. Sunday morning arrived cold and clear. Catherine dressed the children in their best clothes and hitched the wagon. Grant stayed behind, uninvited to the church service, but understanding the unspoken rule a man living under a widow's roof had. No place in respectable society. He watched them ride away, then returned to the barn to mend harness and think. The church sat at the edge of town, white paint peeling, cross leaning slightly. Catherine and the children entered through the back, taking a pew in the last row. Whispers rippled through the congregation like wind through wheat. The Reverend's sermon that morning was pointed. The righteous walk in light. The immoral court darkness. A woman alone must guard her virtue, lest she lead her children into sin. Catherine kept her eyes forward, hands folded beside her. Samuel shifted uncomfortably. Lily pressed closer to her mother's side. After the service, the church ladies descended. Mrs. Doyle, the Reverend's wife, spoke first. Catherine, dear, we're concerned. A man living under your roof, unmarried. It's unseemly, another woman added, her voice dripping false sympathy. You're setting a sinful example for your children. Catherine stood, spine straight. My home. My choice. Judge me if you want, I'll bear it. But leave my children alone. She walked past them, head high, children in tow. But inside, her hands shook. The judgment she'd fled years ago had found her again, dressed in Sunday clothes and wrapped in scripture. Outside, Samuel saw a group of boys by the fence. One of them, the blacksmith's son, sneered and called out, Your mama's a whore. Keeping that drifter. Samuel's vision went red. He lunged, fist connecting with the boy's jaw. They tumbled into the mud, fists flying. Grant, who'd ridden to town separately to buy nails, saw the fight and pulled Samuel off. He held the boy's shoulders, firm but gentle. Easy, son. Easy. Samuel sobbed against Grant's chest. He said he called Mama. I know, but fighting won't fix it. Grant looked at the other boys, his gaze hard. Go on home. They scattered. Catherine arrived, took Samuel from Grant, her face a mask of controlled fury. She thanked Grant quietly, then drove home in silence. That evening, Grant found her on the porch, staring at the mountains. I should leave, he said. I'm ruining everything for you. Catherine turned, her eyes fierce. They've judged me since Thomas died. You're not the problem, their cruelty is. A man's supposed to protect a woman's name, not destroy it. Then stay and prove them wrong. Show them a good man doesn't run. Grant wanted to believe her. But before he could respond, hoofbeats approached. Warren Kent rode up with the sheriff, both men grim-faced. Kent held out a legal document. New evidence shows Thomas Brennan's debts were never paid. I'm foreclosing, Mrs. Brennan. 10 days. Catherine snatched the paper, scanned it. Her face went pale. This is a lie. Thomas paid these loans. The county records say otherwise. Kent's smile was venomous. 10 days, then this land is mine. They rode off, leaving Catherine holding the forged document, her hands trembling with helpless rage. Grant took the paper from her, studied it. His jaw tightened. The signatures were wrong, too neat, too similar. This was forgery, but without proof. It was her word against the county's records. Small minds feared what they didn't understand. Big hearts faced it anyway. But sometimes, courage wasn't enough. Grant packed his bedroll by lantern light, his hands steady despite the chaos in his mind. Earlier that day, Kent had called a town meeting a public spectacle designed to destroy what little remained of Catherine's reputation. And Grant's? Kent had stood before the gathered crowd and pointed at Grant like a prosecutor delivering a death sentence. This man is a deserter. He abandoned his cavalry unit during the Indian Wars. Left his brothers in arms to die. He's a coward and a liar. The words landed like bullets. Grant had tried to speak, to explain that he'd left to bury his dying brother, that he'd returned afterward only to find his unit disbanded and himself branded a deserter. But the crowd's judgment was already rendered. Coward. Disgrace. Unworthy. Catherine had been there. She'd heard everything. When Grant tried to meet her eyes, she'd looked away. Her silence cut deeper than any accusation. Now, in the barn. Samuel and Lily burst through the door. Samuel's face was blotchy from crying. "You promised to teach me tracking. You can't leave." Lily clutched her wooden doll. "Please don't go. Mama needs you." Grant knelt, eye level with them both. "Your mama deserves better than a broken man dragging her down." "You're not broken," Samuel insisted. "You saved me. You teach me things. You make Mama smile." Grant's throat tightened. He hugged them both, then gently pushed them toward the door. "Go back to the house. It's cold." They left reluctantly, looking back with eyes full of betrayal. Grant finished packing, saddled his horse, and rode out at midnight. The moon hung low and full, casting blue light over the frozen valley. He reached the ridge overlooking Catherine's ranch and stopped. The cabin's lantern glowed in the darkness, a single point of warmth in an ocean of cold. He thought of Catherine alone, Kent circling like a vulture, the children scared and confused. He thought of his mother's voice reading scripture by candlelight. The righteous are bold as a lion. A man who ran when things got hard wasn't a man at all. And his mother hadn't raised a coward. No matter what the town said, Grant turned his horse and rode hard toward the county seat, 20 miles east. He arrived at dawn, dismounted outside the county clerk's office, and pounded on the door until a sleepy clerk answered. "I need to see Thomas Brennan's loan records. All of them." The clerk hesitated. Grant's expression left no room for argument. The man unlocked the archives. Grant searched for hours, cross-referencing dates and signatures. And there, buried in a stack of old files, he found it the original loan documents, stamped paid in full 5 years ago. Thomas Brennan's signature, genuine and clear. Beside it, the county seal. Warren Kent had forged new documents, backdated debts that didn't exist. He was stealing her land. Grant paid the clerk to make copies, then rode back as the sun climbed over the mountains. The hardest ride wasn't away from trouble, it was back toward it when you were scared. He reached the ranch by mid-morning. Catherine stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. When she saw him, her expression broke relief. Anger, hope all tangled together. Grant dismounted and held out the documents. "Kent lied. I got proof." Catherine took the papers, scanned them, and her knees nearly buckled. "How did you—" "Doesn't matter. What matters is we stop him." She looked at him, really looked. "I'm sorry I didn't speak for you. At the meeting I was scared and I don't—" Grant shook his head. "Fear makes sense. I've carried enough of it to know." Samuel and Lily ran out, threw themselves at Grant. He caught them, held them, his eyes never leaving Catherine's. She stepped closer. "We fight him together. You and me." Grant nodded. Together. The word hung between them, a vow stronger than any legal document. The town hall was packed. Every rancher, shopkeeper, and gossip within 20 miles had come to watch Warren Kent seize the Brennan Ranch. It was entertainment, a public execution without the noose. Catherine stood at the front, children beside her, spine straight despite the weight of judgment pressing down. Grant entered last, carrying a leather satchel. The crowd murmured. Kent sat at the officials' table, smug and self-assured. Mrs. Brennan, you've had ample time to settle your debts. Since you cannot, the county will do nothing. Grant stepped forward, placing the documents on the table. Because Thomas Brennan paid his loans in full 5 years ago. Kent's smile faltered. That's absurd. The records you forged. Grant spread the papers out, originals and copies, side by side. Look at the signatures. Thomas Brennan's real signature versus the one on your documents. They don't match. You backdated debts that didn't exist. The crowd leaned in, murmuring. The sheriff stood, studied the papers, his expression hardening. Kent's face turned red. This is slander. I'll have you arrested. Arrest me, then. Grant's voice was steady, calm. But those documents speak for themselves. Kent's hand dropped to his belt, fingers closing around his pistol. He drew it, aimed it at Grant's chest. You think anyone believes a deserter? The room went silent. Grant didn't flinch. He stared down the barrel, his voice quiet. Shoot me. Prove you're the coward, not me. Catherine stepped between them, her hands raised. You want to take my land? You'll have to kill me first. And every person here will watch. Her voice rang clear and strong. She looked at the crowd, these people who'd judged her, shunned her, whispered about her. I know what you think of me, but I've never stolen from anyone. Never lied. Never forged a document to take what wasn't mine. Some of the faces in the crowd shifted, doubt replacing certainty. Shame creeping in. The sheriff moved. Kent, lower the gun. Kent's hand shook. He looked around, saw the tide turning, and slowly holstered the pistol. This isn't over. Yes, it is. The sheriff took the documents. Warren Kent, you're under arrest for fraud and attempted theft. 2 deputies moved in. Kent tried to resist, but they cuffed him and let him out. He shouted threats and curses, but no one listened. The crowd dispersed slowly, murmuring. Some looked at Catherine with new respect. Others avoided her eyes, ashamed. Catherine turned to Grant, tears streaming down her face. You came back. I never really left. She grabbed his hand, held it tight. You taught my son courage, taught me I could trust again. Don't leave now. Grant knelt, still holding her hand. Catherine Brennan, I'm asking to court you proper. If you'll have me? Samuel and Lily cheered. A few people in the crowd smiled. Others shook their heads and walked away. Catherine pulled Grant to his feet. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes. He kissed her, gentle, sweet, earned through winter and hardship. The kiss of 2 people who'd fought their way back to life. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was standing when your knees shook, loving when your heart was scared, building when everything told you to run. Late March brought spring in earnest. Snow melted into streams. Wildflowers bloomed in meadows, and birds returned to sing in the trees. The land woke from its long sleep, and so did the people on it. Grant hammered the final nail into the rebuilt fence, the sound echoing across the valley. Samuel handed him tools, mimicking his movements. Lily knelt nearby, planting wildflower seeds in neat rows, her wooden doll propped against a rock to supervise. Catherine watched from the porch, a cup of coffee warm in her hands. She smiled a real smile, unguarded and whole. The ranch had come alive. Grant repaired everything Thomas had neglected: fences, barn doors, the sagging porch steps. Neighbors began to visit. Tentatively at first, Mrs. Doyle came with bread and a stiff apology. Catherine accepted gracefully, without bitterness. Not everyone came. Some families still whispered, still judged. But enough people extended hands in friendship that the isolation began to crack. One evening, Grant sat with Samuel in the barn, teaching him to read from the Bible. Sounded out, "Son, take your time." Samuel's finger traced the words. "The Lord is my shepherd." "That's it. You're doing fine." Lily showed Grant her garden, tiny green shoots pushing through soil. "It's like magic," she whispered. Grant knelt beside her. "No magic, little miss. Just patience and care. You put good seeds in good soil, give them time, and they grow." "Like us?" Lily asked. Grant smiled. "Yeah, like us." That night, as the sun set, Grant and Catherine stood on the porch. He pulled a small wooden ring from his pocket carved from oak, polished smooth. "It ain't much," he said, sliding it onto her finger. "But it's made by hand, like everything worth keeping." Catherine looked at the ring, then at him. "You changed our lives. Grant McCoy. You saved mine first. Ma'am, I'm just returning the favor." She kissed him, soft and sure. "Don't call me ma'am anymore. Call me Catherine." "Catherine," he repeated, the name sweet on his tongue. Sunday came. They attended church together, Catherine, Grant, Samuel, and Lily. They walked in through the front door this time, not the back. Some pews stayed empty around them, others filled. Acceptance was slow, but it was real. After the service, the Reverend shook Grant's hand. "Welcome, Mr. McCoy." It was a small thing, but small things mattered. That evening, the four of them stood in the cabin doorway, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. The sky blazed orange and pink. Grant's arm rested around Catherine's shoulders. The children laughed in the yard, chasing fireflies. The door stayed open. Warm light spilled onto spring grass. Inside, the fire burned steady. Catherine leaned her head against Grant's chest. "We made it through winter." "We did. Think spring will be easier." Grant looked at the land scarred, beautiful, unforgiving. "No, but we'll face it together." She smiled. Together. Out on the frontier. People said every person gets one chance to start over. Grant McCoy and Catherine Brennan took theirs and built something that couldn't be broken. Even by winter's worst cold, they built a home. And in doing so, they built themselves anew. The fireflies danced, the children laughed, the stars emerged, one by one, to bear witness. And the door stayed open, welcoming whatever came next. The end.